regulate.
Yeah, so, you did.
And just to add on to that, like whenever you like sign up for Facebook, like they'll ask you like, oh, what kind of news articles do you like and what topics do you like? You will select that, and then like they will ask you, oh, what is your age and what is your date of birth?
And if you don't
So this way, like they'll
delete it.
give you like a relative news articles that you might find it interesting.
Yeah.
So
So let's talk about, how does Facebook make its money? Advertising.
ads and gig
And what's the
economy.
#1 way to get money from advertising? We talked about this earlier in data mining.
Revenue.
Who do you send ads to? What's the point? How do you get money? Like, how do you decide how much you have to pay Facebook to advertise on their platform?
I mean, I guess it's just like the 20%.
Yeah, so it has to do
That's
with, basically, it's a
20%.
matter of data mining. You look at people, because what's the #1 thing their website cares about? Revenue, and specifically, how do they measure how much revenue, like,
Target.
yeah, how do they
Gig
register who to
economy.
target? It's just a matter of how much time people spend on their web pages and how many clicks they get.
Yeah.
So like the idea of like clickbait, you want things that people are going to click on, because if somebody clicks on it, they then go to your
Or
website.
catfish.
And if they go to your website, then they're going to spend more time seeing the ads that are on it. So if you find out that like there's a certain website that 1,000 people visit a day, you might be like, all right, I think about advertising here. But if it's the sort of website that you find out 10 million people visit it every day, then if you advertise on that site, you are going to get 10 million individual people looking at your advertisements. And so, what's the best way to make sure that people look at a web page for longer? You give them things that they're going to want to look at for a very long time.
Psychological.
So you exploit the fact that
Something that
people
is
like looking at things which are easy on the eye, things that are agree with their views, things that are fun to watch. So like, if somebody could corner the market on advertising on cat video pages, they would have the best advertising possible, because people love watching cat videos on the internet. Like, advertising on YouTube is so valuable because so many people look at it. And so, like, advertising on like my Blackboard site or my YouTube page in particular, or imagine that instead of YouTube I just use like my own personal website, like nobody would pay me a lot of money to advertise on my page because nobody looks at those videos and enough for it to be worth anyone's time. But someone like, you know, PewDiePie, why is it that Facebook or YouTube is willing to pay him millions of dollars a year?
Because he has 100 million subscribers.
Because he has so many millions of people looking at it that it becomes
He's the
like,
only one.
It becomes a financial benefit to a company to advertise on PewDiePie's page to such a degree that PewDiePie can charge for it. And so I will never be able to charge for it because there aren't enough people who want to watch me lecture about cyber ethics. But for some reason, there are enough people who want to watch a random Swedish man like play video games and curse and say mildly off-color things. Like that, there's hundreds of millions of people who want to watch him. And because of that, he can charge a ton of money to advertise. So in the same way, that's the Facebook model. You try to get it so that people spend as much time on Facebook as possible, and that they spend as much time looking and clicking on things as possible. So because of this, if you are Facebook, and you have information about what this person's views are on certain sorts of issues, and you have views on what sorts of news articles or sports teams they like, if you're Facebook, what are you going to present them with? Say you find out that this person is a very devout evangelical Baptist from South Carolina. If your Facebook's algorithms and your goal is to make money and to get this person to stay on Facebook as long as possible and click on as many pages as possible, using your like hypotheses, just thinking about it, what sorts of news articles are you, the Facebook algorithm, going to present to this person, most likely? You know that this person is an evangelical, and you know they're from South Carolina. That's all you know about them. But you can already guess what types of news stories you might give to them, or what sort of science articles you might give them.
Might, you know, put on a story about like a new church that just opened up, or is looking for, you know, people to go to.
Yeah, so here's the sort of, you're going to identify, like, oh, this person is very devout, so we're going to advertise a church to them. if you find somebody is like posting like God is dead every day on their Facebook page, you're not going to advertise in that way to that person.
Oh my God, that's
so that is not, like if Facebook did that, they lose all their customers. But if you find out this person's devout, you give them this. What are some other things though? If somebody's a devout evangelical religious person, what are some things they very often believe?
I was gonna say you might also like put up a article about like a charity or like
a charity. You might find out that this person like is very involved in, say, like missionary work. So you might want to connect this person with some missionary group. But what are some other things you're going to know about this person?
What pages he likes.
Yeah, you're also going to know what pages they like, and you even on some. So what sorts of pages might this person be liking, given what we know about them? If you know somebody is a very, very evangelical Christian, what are some things they almost always also believe? And these are things which we know, and you can think about what the sorts of things a computer can find out.
What was that, like, their position on, like, civil rights movements, like,
So,
homophobia, like...
So here's something that's very generally true.
Islamophobia.
Above the American average, people who are evangelical are going to be anti-homosexual rights. Very often, if you, like, the cake, do people remember this story about the person who attempted?
I heard about this story.
Yeah, they tried to, they owned a bake shop, and a gay couple came in trying to order their wedding cake from these people, and they said, our religious views prevent us from giving you two a cake. And so they said, the couple said, this is discrimination against us, and they said, no, this is a First Amendment religious right. We're allowed, because it's part of our religious views, that homosexuality is wrong. We don't have to serve you a cake. And so if you know someone's evangelical, you know it's more likely than not, like not more likely than not, but more likely than the average American to have negative views towards homosexuality. So if you're trying to get them to stay on your page, you might give them news articles about things like, you know, here's proof from the Bible that homosexuality is wrong, or here's evidence that homosexuality is correlated with these other things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be true. All you as Facebook need to do is make sure that they look at the website. Doesn't matter if it's true or false. If they look at it and they stay on it, the advertisers will give you more money because people are spending more hours looking at the website.
And also, like, Facebook makes gig economy at the same time. Especially, like, people who are, like, surveilling other users that use Facebook.
Yeah, and so because of this, it ends up that Facebook's algorithms are designed to give you news stories you are likely to agree with. Because if you get a news story that says, like, if you're somebody who believes that, like, take me as an example. I am about as strongly anti-vax, aka I'm about as strongly vaxxed as you can get. If they were to spend time sending me anti-vax news stories, well, first off, I never go on Facebook, but if I were, the quickest way to get me to never go on again would be to send me anti-vaxxing news stories. But if I already have anti-vax beliefs, and a new news story comes out that shows that vaxxing is bad, I'm going to click on it, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to stay on it. Even something as simple as they know I follow soccer. Because of that, they can send me news articles about soccer. Or if they know that I am both like socially liberal and a soccer fan, they might send me news articles about soccer from more liberally focused newspapers, which is going to affect what sorts of news I get.
It's kind of, I don't know, it's sad. Like, I don't have a Facebook, so I don't, like, click on articles that are advertised so much, but, like, I still kind of follow pages that agree with my, like, views and beliefs. And, like, one of the things about the internet that I, like, want to believe is that it's impartial and non-biased. I don't know.
Yeah, and so here's the thing about the internet, which is so hard, is, and this is, remember we said, so here's the way to think about it, is if you take the internet as a whole, and you think about it in terms of like ones and zeros are not biased. They are ones and zeros, and you know what else isn't biased? Physical cables. Like, you're never gonna hear, like, the internet runs on cables and like electrical signals and waves. You don't run into, like, you can't find a racist fiber optic cable. It doesn't exist. It's literally made out of metal. That's all it is. However, what is exchanged across it is going to be a huge collection of information. And what you can think of it as is what's on the internet runs all the way from good to bad, and from like well-researched to poorly. And basically, if you take the internet as a whole, it's going to basically be pretty unbiased, because if you consider every viewpoint on the internet, they're all going to cancel each other out. The problem is that nobody ever looks at everything that's on the internet, and you can plot a course on the internet in which you basically only look at the things you want, and if you stay in that little space, then you're going to end up holding stronger views. So if this page here covers the fact that you are both a doctor who studies surgery and does a lot of good heart surgery, but also you love, white supremacy, then you're going to find your news you get on the internet, you're just personally going to more often look at news stories that agree with you, and then the algorithms which are supplying you with that information are going to benefit the likelihood of that as well. Christina?
I don't know, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, it's kind of, sad that people, because, I've learned a lot about, different people, and just, different movements, and just, everything that we learn is pretty much online, and, if people that have really radical views are only exposed to their radical views, they're gonna not only learn about that stuff more, but also think that that's the world, because that's the portrayal.
And that's exactly, that as a matter of fact is what we're seeing with the internet, for better and for worse. So on the one hand, we are seeing tons and tons of people who are using the internet for political and social movements, and using it to connect with people and start political views and political organizations that couldn't have existed before the internet. And they do this by reaching out to people who don't necessarily have the same views as them, or have similar worries but come at it from a different background, and people who might not have ever talked before. So things like the #MeToo movement was a way in which women of all races and ethnic backgrounds, and basically as long as you had a Twitter and an internet connection, you could find other people of any economic background, of any job, who faced similar sorts of issues, and there was a way in which a social movement could be started. Or think about the way in which Black Lives Matter got off the ground. It was a matter of people of color in cities around the nation individually were facing the same sorts of issues, but until they were able to communicate across state boundaries, it wasn't as big of a movement. And what ended up happening is people in San Francisco were able to see, oh, people in St. Louis are facing the exact same sort of police brutality that we are. And what is going on out there?
I don't know, there's people out there.
Whatever. Unless it's the shout if they start biting each other. Because remember, good room to be in. Alright, so this is what we see, and one worry with the fact that Facebook gets all, the way Facebook does this, is it used to be the case, we all would always, to some degree, decide to watch the news channels that we kind of lean towards. So if you had conservative views to begin with, you'd watch Fox News. If you had more liberal views, you'd go to CNN or NBC. And that's always kind of how it's been, or C-SPAN. But nowadays, it's changed because of Facebook. What's the major difference here? What is it about Facebook being the major source of news, which is more of a problem? And I think, Gleb, you touched on this, I think. What is it about Facebook being the #1 source that's worse in some ways than these other ones? Why is it more problematic?
Because social media nowadays is getting more and more spread out throughout the countries. Say 1995, Google made its debut, but in 2012, that's the year when Facebook has reached every single country when it comes to social media, and
so
that's
is
why
one major issue, is that now, because it's so much bigger and everyone has access 24 hours a day, if something is given to you on Facebook or something's put on Facebook, it reaches a lot more people a lot faster. So if Fox News runs a news story which was, say, later shown to include falsehoods, or CNN ran a news story which turned out later to have falsehoods. The only
Nobody
people
has
who-
access to that.
But,
Nobody has access to that, because like most of the people that use Facebook, they don't have access to TV.
So yeah, so that's another thing, yeah, so basically, if you wanted to get the news back when it was on TV, you had to sit down during an hour and watch the news. And the only people who were generally doing this were older, or people who had a
Baby boomers.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Of the
yeah.
new
So like
generation.
stereotypically, you think of who's sitting at home and still watching the news. It's the boomers. The boomers are watching the news because they still have television. How many of you have, like, out of curiosity, how many of you currently live in a house that gets, like, actually, not like a television that is just, like, hooked up to the internet and you use Netflix, like, literally hooked up to a cable line?
Yeah.
How many do we have? It's about 50-50. Okay. I do not. I remember when, like, my parents are still insistent on, like, how many of you actually have a landline phone as well? Okay, so we've got about a third. So yeah, so these are the things where, like, these are fundamentally different, and because of that, like, the news is not getting to people through the television, and because of that, everyone is getting access to the news through Facebook, and also, like, as soon as news breaks, you can get it now. It used to be, like, if you go back to 1900, you wouldn't know about something till the next morning. If you go back to, 25 years ago, you wouldn't know that something happened until it showed up on the news. And for most things that didn't get, like, they wouldn't change the news cycle unless something really big happened. Like on 9/11, every normal programming was changed and everything went to the news. But back, like, most things you'd have to wait until 7 o'clock. Now it's literally like if you have a Twitter and you follow a news site, or you have a Facebook and you follow something, you know in a matter of seconds that something halfway around the world has happened.
Also, YouTube and news, like, you don't have to get the news on the TV. Like, all of those segments are on YouTube.
Yeah, and here's the other thing is you don't need
Reuters.
Yeah, Reuters,
Reuters,
any
yeah.
sort of online platform. Now, on the one hand, it's bigger, but what's the other side? What else separates, even, like, regardless of what your views are, and which the biased media are, what is true of something like CNN or Fox, which isn't true of Facebook?
They are biased.
So on the one hand, they are biased, but on the other hand, like, let's be clear, everything in human history is biased. We are human beings, we have implicit biases. So on the one hand, like, these news stories are going to give you a certain perspective on the news. They can't help it. However, they also...
They have, I'm trying to, the word, I don't use the right word. They have, like, credentials.
Yeah, so it's tied in with credentials. They have, like, quality control. Basically, they have news editors. What is a news editor's job? To make sure that what you print in your news article is not blatantly false. If the New York Times
Completely
wanted to
irrelevant.
run a news story that said Hillary Clinton is running a child prostitution ring out of the basement of a pizza shop, that could not get published. Why?
They have to try to prove it. And
Yeah, you
be
need to
credible.
have proof and sources. And you need to, before an editor is willing to let you put anything on a news site, you have to prove to them that you have proof that it's true. Now, as we said, these news sites are, like, actual news, it's to some degree biased, and, like, what counts as a good source is going to change based on who you are. But at the very least, even if it's something like Fox News, right-wing bias, CNN, left-wing bias, whatever you think on it, whatever degrees, they still have to go to an editor who says, like, you can't put that Trump likes to have sex with babies. You can't put that in our newspaper. But if somebody wants to post that on their website, and that website gets a lot of clicks, and Facebook wants people to go to that website that gets a lot of clicks, what's going to happen? It's going to post, and the algorithms are going to say, yeah, post that. People are going to that website all the time.
Like you mentioned, so, like, certain news stations, right? Stations?
Yeah.
Like, have different biases, and I feel like Facebook is, like, one step down the line where, like, you have all of these different stations with different biases, and Facebook kind of just like picks them out for you.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way to think about it, is you can think about, ooh, where did I put my marker?
Mhm.
I literally just had it. Yeah. Alright, so, think about it this way. Here's a human being, and we are biased. And the way we used to make a decision is like, you have CNN, and you have Fox News. And you get to choose which one you want to watch. And what decides? You make the choice. You go, oh, I want to watch Fox News, and you start watching Fox News. Nowadays, you aren't even really making that choice. What ends up happening is you go online and you go, oh, I'm going to read the news. I'm going to go to Facebook. And it takes you to Facebook. And what Facebook does, and you look at Facebook and you're like, Facebook is innocent. Facebook is just a site which gives me things that might interest me. Facebook is just a way to connect with my like friends from far away. You don't realize that what happens is Facebook thinks to itself, and this isn't a person, this is an algorithm. The algorithm goes, I don't know how to spell algorithm. I think, based on what this person looks at, they have views which are more in line with Fox News. So, let's just send them Fox News articles. So you go to Facebook and all it does is take you to Fox News. And then if you click on those articles and you like them, the Facebook algorithm's going to go, oh, they like Fox News. Let's keep sending them there. That you keep sending them there. And by some point, what's going to happen is all Facebook is ever going to show you is that something like a Fox News article. Or, to add on to it, the other thing it can do is if it finds that you liked the parts of Fox News which were like really edgy, like, you know, here's, next we have somebody who's thinking that 9/11 it was a fake, or 9/11 was a hoax. Then, and they find out like, oh, you watched that article on 9/11 as a hoax. Let's send you to InfoWars. Let's see if you like that. Do people know what InfoWars is? Yeah, so they send you to InfoWars, and so now all of a sudden you're not even going to Fox News. You're going all the way over here to InfoWars. InfoWars, he's the one who thinks that the rain is turning the frogs gay.
What?
Yeah, that was a good one. So yeah, it's gonna think, and if you stay going to InfoWars, and you go and click on it a lot, it's going to keep sending you there. And what's going to end up happening is, when you go online to look for the news, what the news means to you is InfoWars. And that's all you're going to see. And you go to where it used to be Fox News, or it used to be CNN, back when you originally logged onto Facebook. It's now only taking you to these places. And that's how you end up with somebody who years ago on their Facebook, on their thing, was getting like Fox News articles about 9/11 and the importance of invading Iraq. Well, that was before Facebook. You can imagine something like that. Or like you saw somebody who was saying like the importance of, with the terrorist attack in Paris, what we saw is that more Americans need to have guns to protect themselves. And you got this as like an opinion piece from Fox News. It then led you, now all the news you see are things like, there are pizza places that Hillary Clinton's running a child pornography ring out of. And if that's all you're seeing on the same platform, then you're going to come to hold these views which are extreme. And so, that's the sort of thing that's now possible. And that's the way that, because Americans get their news, and this is the mechanism, it's just changing the way we get information. So on the one hand, if you want to get information about things, and you want to ask questions about different views, you can. If you are somebody whose Facebook sent you to InfoWars, you can now, by choice, go and search for proof against InfoWars. Or if you're somebody who spent your whole childhood watching Fox News because that's what your parents watched, and you want to find out, like, are there other viewpoints? You can now find those viewpoints easily enough as long as you actively search. But if you're just going to Facebook and just clicking on things like most of us do, because our phones are designed to make us just want to mindlessly click, 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 you're going to end up with views that almost certainly agree with yours. And so, this is one of the major worries, and this is why people like Elizabeth Warren are so up in arms about Facebook, because they see that this sort of thing is happening. And that's the worry. It's like we now have an organization that has these, like, is merging the way people get their news with a desire to get advertising money, and it's leading to these sorts of issues, for better and for worse. Because on the other hand, like there are positives. Like just to be clear, there can be positives to this sort of stuff. If it wasn't for the fact that you can think about people who, if it wasn't for the fact that a certain person early on and say like right when Black Lives Matter was starting up, if it wasn't for the fact that like two different people halfway across the country were posting about similar racial issues, the algorithms might not have realized to suggest to both these people like consider following this, and then say that platform was the one where people with these similar views could talk, get their ideas together, and start a movement. So on the one hand, there are positives, but there are these major worries and major negatives. Also then, this is something we kind of talked to when we went back to that